All right, there we are. A few technical difficulties this morning, but I got there in the end. Welcome to the SitRep for the 3rd of May 2022. I am now sufficiently caffeinated, so we will crack on. For those who haven't joined these before, this is where I go through news articles that I've seen the last couple of days, look at it from the angle of a prepper. So what are we going to do to better prepare ourselves for some of these effects that might be happening in the world? My theory being that I look at all this sort of shit anyway, and was kind of talking to people about it, and they're like, wait, what? Where did you hear this? Where are you getting this information? So I figured I'd just start telling people about it, and then other people can worry as much as me. No, the point is not to worry about what's going on. It's just to look at what's happening so you can see what's happening in the world. We can gain a better picture of where we're heading as a species, as a society, and as individuals, and better prepare ourselves, because I believe that a better prepared, more self-reliant human being will be safer and more handy for everyone else in case of an emergency, which is more than likely on a different scale than we usually see large emergencies. All right, so anyway, enough babble, let's crack on with it. First story that's coming in, this one's on Zero Hedge, one of my favorite websites, which, take it for what it is, but it puts up interesting stuff and catches my eye. A lot of clickbait there for me. Food shortages in 6 months. So we've got the globalists who have been starting to talk about this. We're seeing this more and more in the starting to creep into the mainstream media. And I actually caught a story that looked suspiciously like food shortages are coming on one of the Australian mainstream media sites yesterday. And I was like, ooh, this is interesting. Now they're starting to get it. So this one, what they're referencing here was someone from the Rothschild Foundation. And I did read the report on this probably about 4 or 5 days ago, when it actually first came out, but now it's starting to leak out into other channels and get noticed. That basically this person came out and said 6 months we'll see food shortages. On top of that, what we're probably going to see is food shortages of varying extremity. In the extreme, in the poorer countries, and then maybe not so much in the rich countries, i.e. like Australia. But we will definitely see food shortages. The amount of food that we have access to now, I think, is on a pretty short timeline. And I think within 6 months, we'll start to see a lot of the products that we're used to having no longer there. And certainly when we think about things like the fresh products, maybe a lot of the packaged, processed shit food, we'll still see a lot of that around because it can be stored long term and can be still shipped around and moved around. But I think it's really the important food, what I would actually call food, your produce, your fruit and veg, and your meat products and things like that. That's what we're going to start to see shortages in for a number of reasons. And I will talk about some of those reasons in some of these other stories. Once again, I didn't sit down and go through these stories. All right, yet another fire at a food facility. I hadn't had one in 2 days, so we're overdue. Another one in the US. We're in, where are we? Chesapeake. Purdue Farms facility. So this is the South Norfolk area of Chesapeake in the US, which I don't know at all where it is, but this is a food manufacturing plant, industrial sort of style thing. Yet another one to add to the list. So I've reported on this ad nauseum, that we're seeing consistently these fires, these disasters, these problems happen, shortages here, shortages there, diseases break out in a lot of our food facility areas. The actual fires within the food facilities, which seems to be almost at an epidemic in the US. I don't know any other way to describe it, how anyone can look at this and go, well, that's weird. What a strange coincidence. I think we need to stop using the word coincidence and start going, hey, what the fuck is going on here with our food? But that's just one sector or one avenue of attack into our food system. There's many that are going on at the moment. and it should be concerning. Guess what? Bird flu. So we've had bird flu in different parts of the world, and now France has come out and said they're going to cull 16 million birds due to the flu outbreak. So that's the latest country that's come out and said that they've got problems. I was reporting yesterday on the Japanese encephalitis from Australian pigs in our industry. So that's where we've hit it. Thus far, I haven't seen any news of bird flu in Australia, but see how long that lasts. But yeah, another one. We've got one in France now. We can see it popping up in Europe. So Europe's in all sorts of mess at the moment, and their food supply, I don't know how they're going to hold up for the next 12 months. I don't think very well. To hold up for the next 12 months, I don't think very well. So shortages across the board. As I always say, I think like we need to really start thinking about this. We've got the time, we've got the space, we've actually got access to a lot of resources right now and a lot of food right now, and you should be using this time and using those resources to build up a bit of fat more to dogs going crazy. We're just pausing a bit apparently on the Instagrams, so I'm just going to restart this, chase my dogs down to see what they're doing, and I will be back in 1 sec. All right, so hopefully this is a bit better. Take 2 or part 2 of the SitRep for the 3rd of May 2022. Okay, let's switch over from food shortages. Dogs have settled down. Let's switch over from food shortages now and head over to Europe to have a look at what's happening in Finland. We've got a very complicated situation that's unfolded over there and is continuing to unfold with what's going to happen with the people of Europe. Mainly based around, obviously, it's the Ukraine crisis that's instigating all this sort of thing. There's another number of other factors that are happening there as well, but the natural gas and the reliance on natural gas and oil and other products coming out of Russia, but mainly this natural gas, is going to cause havoc. So yesterday, Russia cut off gas to Poland and one other country that I can't remember what it was. But they said we're not paying in rubles. Interestingly, I don't think I've actually got the story here, but I was reading it this morning where they have Hungary came out and said we are going to pay in rubles. Here we go. Here it is. Hungary throws EU neighbors under the bus and says that 10 nations technically buying gas for rubles from Putin. So they've come out and they've said, yeah, we need the gas. Obviously, we're going to do this. Like you've given us no other alternative. Whereas every other country's like, no, we're not doing it. No, absolutely, we have to make these sanctions work. The people, you're all just going to have to tighten your belts and take cold showers, et cetera, et cetera. And Hungary's said, no, we're going to look after our people and we're going to buy it because we have to, because you've given us no viable alternative to do that yet. And so they started getting a lot of pressure, and now Hungary's come out and said, well, it's not just us. There's 9 other nations that are currently doing it. They're just not saying that they're doing it. They're using other little systems, but technically they're paying for their gas in rubles. And this, I think, is starting to put a little bit of tension within that EU, or increase that tension within the EU itself. And I talk about this quite often, that a lot of people think that the EU and NATO, well, NATO sort of is, but the EU is this homogenized force that just sticks together and moves as one big beast. And when you actually start to look at it, it's not like that at all. It's a number of countries who are, as countries are self-serving, that speak different languages, that have different cultural backgrounds, and do things for the benefit of their own people. So we've seen this with a number of countries come out and say, like, well, this has nothing to do with us, or no, we actually don't support this supplying Ukraine with weapons and things like that. And now Hungary's come out and said, well, yeah, we're going to pay for it in rubles, and so are other countries. So they're kind of they're opening it up here. So it kind of looks like it could expose something, but it's definitely creating those tension lines are starting to become cracks, I think, within the EU. And we're not seeing that homogenized front that I think a lot of people expect from an area like this. Finland is going to do their vote, apparently, allegedly, on May 12th. So coming up very soon, in just over a week. They're going to have a look at going into NATO. The thing with this is they said they would pause it and try and go in at the same time as Sweden. So they're kind of waiting for the catch up. But this announcement here, I don't know if Sweden's brought their timeline up. I don't know if they're also going to jump in there as well. But we could have Finland come into NATO very quickly, which creates a very large land border right up against Russia that they have. And Sweden, obviously, there was a bit of a kick up military wise in the last 72 hours where Russian planes again breached Swedish airspace. Russian military planes breached Swedish airspace. So that was a bit of a puckering moment for everyone as they started to ramp that up. But yeah, so more countries falling into NATO, which I think is kind of expected and a little bit inevitable at this stage. What else they're going to do, and who knows how that will play out. That's increasing a large area of border against Russia for NATO. Finland also is preparing to live without Russian gas. So they have come out and said that in less than 3 weeks, they're going to cut their gas coming in from Gazprom. Gazprom's the largest gas supplier into Europe. That's a Russian company. So yeah, they're going to cut it. Deadline is May 20 for that. So let's see how they go. I mean, they're coming up into summer. So I would imagine there's a decreased need for gas, but it's not zero. They're still going to need gas. So it'll be interesting to see where this gas starts to flow in from. There's a number of alternative plans that they've got in place. Let's see how that works out. I think this is something that one of these consequences. I actually feel like the West kind of thought, oh, we'll knock them over. We'll put these sanctions on. They'll crumble. The whole thing will blow over. Then we'll get it back in, and we'll probably get it cheaper then. And it hasn't happened. And the more this goes on, and the West is saying, yep, Russia's almost beat now in Ukraine. They're about to collapse. It's all over. The sanctions are working, and it doesn't happen. I think it's just reinforcing to the world, or at least opening people's eyes to go like, hang on a minute. I thought we were beating them. I thought it was over. What's actually happening here? Because my take on it, my opinion of it is Russia is not in that bad of a shape in there. And I don't think Russia is on the verge of capitulation in any sense in this war. I mean, I could be totally wrong. And like I say, this is just my take on it. And I try and tell you where I'm reading a story from somewhere and where I'm opinionated on something, but this is my take on it from reading it. I don't think Russia committed anywhere near a large percentage of their forces into Ukraine. I think that they're meticulous and they're taking their time with it. I don't think they're losing in any sense of the word. And I don't think the sanctions are doing what the West thought the sanctions would do against Russia, because Russia has increased their supply to China, and they are continuing to increase their supply to China through a pipeline that they've apparently been bolstering, this pipeline. And I can't recall the name of the pipeline. So it's Spirit of China or Spirit of Russia or something like that. Anyway, these, like the Nord Stream, there's a couple other ones that went actually through Ukraine. These major pipelines where they're pumping gas into Europe are starting to get cut. And actually, I don't have the report here, but there was a story this morning that I saw that what they do is release the gas usage, or the gas that they're going to pipe through these pipelines for the next quarter. So we're looking at quarter 3. Russia, Gazprom's come out and said that main one that comes into Poland and then squirts out through into Germany, it's got 0 on it at the moment for quarter 3. So they're predicting to not put any gas through that in quarter 3 at the moment. That can change, obviously, but that's a pretty telling sign. And they've increased apparently by 60% what they're pumping into China. So they're going to start pumping it down in China. China will be buying it. We've got other nations who are buying other resources out of Russia. Russia is a very resource-rich country. And they're forcing people to pay rubles, as we're seeing. I just don't think, sanctions are doing what people think sanctions are doing. But on the other side of that house, China, how's China looking? What are they thinking about? There's a lot of conflicting stuff coming out of China at the moment. There's a lot of worry coming from the West coming about China at the moment. But China has just summoned its banks over sanction fears. So the Chinese government is reportedly held an internal conference with officials from foreign and local banks as the nation seeks to protect overseas assets from US sanctions over potential military tensions in Taiwan. And I think coupled with that is the rhetoric that's coming in at China at the moment about them not putting sanctions on Russia. And in fact, not only not putting sanctions on Russia, but continuing to buy resources from Russia. And then not just continuing to do that, but increasing quite a bit the resources they're buying out of Russia. So China's obviously, working in opposition on that front to the West's ends. And now they're looking at Taiwan. And this is yet another, I'm looking for those signs. I'm always sort of going, okay, this Taiwan thing, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for Australia. We need to be worried about this if it happens. And I'm always looking for little signs. I'm thinking, if they're starting to pull people and go, hey, you need to think about what happens if we get sanctioned. That's kind of telling me that they're very strongly thinking that they're going to get sanctioned. And the main reason I think they would get sanctioned is if they invaded Taiwan. And more on Taiwan to finish off with. But we've got a couple other reports. I won't actually talk about this one, but it was just interesting because we've got pundits, we've got experts, we've got people who study this sort of stuff are starting to come out and say, hey, what do we do about China? We need to start talking about China. And I thought that's interesting that we got people coming out to the mainstream media and saying, China, China, China. It's the groundwork is being laid. With what we saw sort of later last year, in the last half or the last quarter of last year, really was it ramped up about Russia. Russia bad. Oh, Russia's invaded. We told you they were bad. Iran. Pentagon believes, so take that for whatever you want, whatever the Pentagon believes, because the Pentagon is, I think, one of the main arms of the West propaganda machine now, more than anything, rather than an intelligence service of any sort. Pentagon believes that Iran will have enough enriched uranium in May, that's this month, in May, to create a nuclear bomb. So again, when I tell these stories, when I'm looking at these stories, what catches my interest isn't necessarily the story itself, although this is interesting in and of itself. Like, Iran could have nuclear weapons by May. They could become a nuclear state by May. But it's also the fact that Pentagon has released this information. Okay, so why is Pentagon telling everyone that Iran is about to become a nuclear state? And again, this is part of the broader propaganda scheme, I think, that we have in the West. They're starting to lay the foundations, and I've been talking about this quite a bit, of here is the bad basket, the naughty list, and here is the good list. People who do what we say and are in alignment with us are the good people. Everyone else is in the naughty basket. And Iran is very definitely in the naughty basket. Iran, Israel, and Iran is very definitely in the naughty basket. Iran, Israel tensions that we've been seeing recently that I like to talk about to remind everyone, hey, there's more wars than just what's happening in Ukraine. So Iran, oh, yep, they're bad. And let's start to create these boogeymen. Let's like really start to ramp them up. So the story I just talked about before, China, we need to talk about China. China's going to invade. China bad. Also, Iran bad. And it's this kind of, I can't even think of an acronym. Brickies. There we go. Or Brinkies. I don't know. I'll think of something more better on that one. But I haven't had enough coffee this morning. I had a shit night's sleep. What it is, we got Brazil, we got Russia, we got India, we got China, we've got also thrown into the mix sort of South Africa. We have Iran, we have North Korea, and I've been talking about this for a very long time. These are people who are in some way on the outer. They are also, those first four especially, the largest land space, the largest people on the face of the earth, and some of the resource heaviest countries on the face of the earth. So their combined might, if they were to combine, would be orders of magnitude beyond anything else. And I'm not saying they're going to combine, but we're seeing the reasons for them to become in some way linked stronger. So in military senses, it makes sense at the moment for Russia and China to align. Russia and North Korea, obviously, that's a thing. For those who don't know, there's a little thing called communism. Go read about it. It's what weak people do. We've got Iran coming into the mix, and obviously Iran wants to stand up and it wants to reclaim some former glory that it had from a long time ago, and it wants to be shown, it wants to be seen, and it wants to show the world how much it can punch. So we got that coming into the mix. Brazil, obviously, on the outer in many different ways from the US, but all these countries and India's just being India. India's doing itself, but India just is not aligning with what the US wants it to align as, and I think rightly so. India's just saying, look, we need to look after our people. We have a fair chunk of the world's population right here with us right now. And I think all these countries too are looking into the future and going, where are we heading? Are we heading into a time where we're going to magically have more resources? Or are we heading into a time where we're going to have less resources? Is it going to be harder for each individual people are in just China and India alone to support their own people through their own farming practices? The answer is no. Is there going to be more devastating natural disaster effects that are going to be happening to their people? Yes. So they're worried. They're looking at this and they're going, the future does not look super bright for us. In fact, we're playing musical chairs at the moment, and whoever gets those resources might actually be in a position where they're going to be able to support their population for the next 100 years. So that's what we're seeing at the moment. That's the magnitude of what we're seeing at the moment. That's how we need to start thinking about things. And pushing these countries onto the outer, I don't think is a great idea. But what's the effect for us is, what can we do as individuals? We need to start thinking about this. We can't just, continue on as normal and go, everything's fine. And, what's the West propaganda we're eating? Yep, let's eat that. We really need to start looking at things critically, like this sort of information coming out, and go, okay, cool. There's a lot of stuff going out in the world stage at the moment. Where do I actually sit? Because at the end of the day, you can't do anything about this. You can't do anything about Iran, becoming a nuclear state or not. But you can look after yourself, and you can look after your own family. And that's what I keep trying to get across to people, to bring it back to, is grow your own garden. I get sick of saying it. Russian nukes, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. All right, I'll wrap up with this. Taiwan let down. The island is considering options after US delays howitzer delivery. So supply chains, again, I'll throw out this book, Atlas Shrugged. You should read it. If you read Atlas Shrugged, you'll probably understand a little bit what's happening in the world right now. Where everyone's going like, oh, isn't it horrible that these things are happening? What a coincidence. Oh, look at this. Oh, these facilities burning. What a coincidence. Oh, we can't get enough parts to build cars. Isn't that a coincidence? Weird coincidence. Oh, these things can't get shipped here, and now we can't get these things. That's a weird coincidence. It's not a weird coincidence. All this stuff's been in the pipeline and been happening for the past 5 to 10 years. And if you've had your eyes open, you would have seen all this unfolding and being, somewhat concerned about it. But now we're seeing it actually play out. So the US is at the moment pumping money into Ukraine, pumping weapons into Ukraine. They just signed off. They gave the thumbs up in their parliament for the Lend-Lease agreement, which if you haven't heard of the Lend-Lease agreement, go look it up, because this is bloody important. This is super, mind-blowingly important. This is an agreement that is of the magnitude of something that they haven't done since World War II, that they have basically said that our government, that Uncle Joseph can literally sign a blank check to give whatever they want to Ukraine right now. Does that not strike anyone as just a little bit weird? That this country, think of all the conflicts that we've had over the past, 70 years since World War II, and for this one here in Ukraine, this is the one where they've gone, no, blank check, let's do it. We've got to support Ukraine. Give them whatever they want. Pump it all in there. Anything they need, they've got. Literally, blank check. There is a caveat on it that at a later date, they get to pay it back. But, this is the sort of thing that people should be looking at going something's not quite right here. Something is very out of place here. Creative redundancy on the YouTubes, you know what's up. Having a bit of a laugh at that too. It's a weird situation that we're looking at. But Taiwan, they've ordered howitzers. The US has gone, yep, we're going to give you howitzers. Then the US has come back and said, about that, we don't actually have the parts. Can't do it. Wow, why wouldn't you have the parts? Where were those parts coming from? One could only imagine. Have a look at the systems that are going on at the moment. Have a look at the ports that are closed down. No shit, you can't get the parts. If countries aren't making their own stuff at the moment, and if you're not making your own stuff, or at least prepared to make your own stuff at the moment, then you're going to be in for a lot of pain in the future. Our supply chain, the entire system is collapsing in on itself as we speak. There's still time for us to save it, but even if right now, today, in Shanghai, which has a month backlog, this is the biggest port in the world, the most used port in the world. Even today, with this month backlog that we have, if we cleared it somehow, just clicked our fingers and the whole thing was cleared today, we would still be feeling the effects of it until the end of the year. Thing is, it's not going to be cleared today. Thing is, it's not even going to get better today. It's getting worse today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So the effects that we're going to be feeling from Shanghai alone are going to stretch out way into 2023, and who knows? Who knows how longer than that? Who knows how much longer than that? Creative redundancy on the YouTube just said, hopefully until then there are reserves of things and supplies. We hope so. We hope so. But what I try and teach people is be your own backup reserve. Don't expect the strategic oil reserve in your country to back you up, because they're not going to. Be your own strategic oil reserve. Be your own reserve bank. Have your own gold and silver. Have your own backups. Have your own personal food supply in your own house. Grow your own garden. Be your own security expert. Be your own police. And that's where I'm going to wrap it up for today, guys. I've talked way too much. I'm way too tired. So, as always, if you've got any questions for me, please feel free to shoot them through, either on the YouTubes or on the Instagrams. Always willing to answer questions, or at least I will throw them up onto something like this in the next day or two. Thank you very much for joining me, for watching, and for listening to me ramble. I really appreciate everyone who jumps on. I appreciate the likes. I appreciate the good comments and the well wishes. It's always awesome and always heartwarming to see. So until next time, gang, stay safe and Semper Paratus.